everyone, we hope you're enjoying the Developer Marketing Summit so far. Just before we jump into the next session, we are so excited to be launching the Developer Marketing Alliance as its own community. So keep your eyes peeled for the link to our new Slack community in the comments, where we'll be carrying on the discussion of all things developer marketing after the summit. Join to connect with peers, ask questions, get access to fresh content, hear about upcoming events like this one, and discover new opportunities. Also, don't forget you can re-watch these amazing sessions whenever you want with on-demand access. All you need to do is sign up for an Access All Areas Pass or PMA Pro membership. With a PMA Pro membership, you'll also get footage from past events, exclusive content, templates, frameworks to help you excel in your role, plus so much more. But for now, back to the Developer Marketing Summit.
Hello everyone, my name is Mario Viviani and I'm very excited to be here. Today I'll be talking about what does success look like in developer relations. How can you define meaningful goals for your team to drive success? So a few words about me. My name again is Mario. I'm Italian born, but I've been living in London for the last almost 7 years. And I'm a technologist at core. I'm a developer myself, and I come mostly from the mobile apps and game space, but I like to play with a lot of different technologies. Recently, I'm very passionate about things like AR and VR and blockchain. So in general, I like to tinker with things. Then I think that that's what drove me to developer relations in general. I've been also founding startups before my time at Amazon, but since 2015, I'm with Amazon. I started as their technology evangelist, and then I grew into different functions. And currently, I lead a team of developer advocates and marketers within the evangelist team under apps and games for Amazon devices. And within this role, I actually developed a series of experiences that I think might be useful to share with you today, in particular in regards to what does success look like in developer relations. So let's jump straight in. If there is what we can maybe call the mother of all questions in developer relations, it should be, how do you measure success? I know this is a question that I've been asked a lot of times by leaders in the different roles that I had before in developer relations. And it's probably the most difficult question to answer. And the reason for that is that there are a lot of preconceptions on developer relations, on what we do. These are all adjectives that have been given to developer relations from different members of teams and leadership teams that I've been working with. And developer relations has been referred to as a fluffy business, a touchy-feely business, or a squishy business. So in general, meaning with a type of activity that is difficult to measure intrinsically, something that is too human, too based on relationship and engagement to be something that can be measured. And I disagree. I actually think that that's what we actually have to do as developer relations experts, as developer marketeers, and as evangelists as well, is to actually demonstrate that developer relations can be a very data-driven world, and that everything that we do is not touchy-feely, but is something that not only can be measured, but that we can demonstrate as true value for the business. And when it comes to success, many companies, I would say most companies, are obsessed with the concept of measure of success. And I would say rightfully so, right? At the end, we want to know how are we driving success for the business, and that is the most important thing. However, when it comes to developer relations in particular, and even before we define the measure of success for developer relations, I think we need to take a step back and define what actually success means, because it has a lot of different nuances and it depends a lot of different things depending if we're thinking about what does success look like for our team individually, for the functions of our team, but even what does success look like for the company overall that we work for. So what does good look like? I think that's the question that we need to ask ourselves when it comes to success. What does good look like for the company? So, for example, what is your company's end game? Not just your developer relations team, but your own company. What are they trying to drive? And why is it important to ask this fundamental question? Because based off of that, we can also reverse engineer what our contribution into this end game should be from a developer relations perspective. Then you should ask yourself, what is your department focus? Like developer relations has a lot of different nuances. You might be more focused on the content and advocacy side, more on the marketing side. And think about who is your customer as well. Your customer, usually when it comes to developer relations, is the developer. We want to provide a great experience to developers and to push for adoption of some developer product. And this is often intrinsically different from the company endgame that might be, maybe the company want to push the purchase of a specific product by end consumers, which is very different from developers. So I think it's important to decompose what does that look like and then start thinking about how your customer, the developer, and them taking action contributes into your company's endgame. But usually for developer relations, success means a developer adopting a product. This could be a lot of different things. It can be adopting a new feature, launching a new version of something that is already out. It could be a new go-to-market product that we need to push adoption for. It could be like pushing adoption of documentation of a new SDK or an API. So at the end, usually there is some activity that you need to put down, some marketing or education activity that you need to put down, and then there is a result that you want to measure, which is adoption. And we will talk a lot about adoption today. Adoption is what the end game should be for us as developer relations overall. And how do we get to adoption? That is the journey that we need to go through. So it all starts with tracking capabilities. You need to put yourself and your team in the condition of being able to say, I know the developer has consumed content X. You want to be able to track the developer activity, track what are they doing as a consequence of the input that you're providing, which is a marketing activity, sharing content, and so more. You need to track what you do. And then you need to attribute. So if tracking means that I know the developer has consumed content X, attribution means that I know that as a consequence of that, the developer has adopted the product. And this is easy said, but it's not easily done. There are actually a few potential configurations for this. There are mostly two scenarios in which most of the developer relations organizations find themselves in. There is what I would call the ideal tracking and attribution scenario. You have your entire developer journey is tracked. That means that all the steps from discoverability of your marketing content and activity down to the content consumption and finally with even the product adoption are tracked end to end. The entire journey of the developer that goes through it is tracked. This means that you can easily build attribution. You know exactly who came into your marketing activities, who is coming top of the funnel, who has consumed the content, and who has adopted it. This means that you can determine causation. Action causes result. You can demonstrate that. You have data and reports that clearly define this journey. And if you're in this configuration, in this scenario, 5 stars, you're done from an infrastructure perspective. You have all the building blocks that you need to be able to demonstrate success. You can go to your leadership and say, we've done X amount of marketing activities with X amount of developers, and we know exactly who these developers are. These developers consume content, and a certain amount of them took action, and we know exactly who they are. So this is great. You can go to your leadership and demonstrate value. You can demonstrate attribution. You can demonstrate adoption of the product directly as a consequence of your marketing activities. This also means that you are probably in the something like the 1% of all developer relations organizations. Most developer relations organizations actually are in what I would call the second, less ideal scenario. So the less ideal tracking and attribution scenario is where you actually don't have end-to-end tracking and attribution. The vast majority of developer relations organizations are in this situation. And a lot of the younger new developer relations organizations usually end up here, which means that you have two things that you can measure. You can measure your marketing activities, so the action that you're taking. You can see, how many campaigns have you done? You can measure how many developers are even looking at the content and, what content is being consumed. You know that. And then you have on the other side, you can measure the product adoption. You know how many people are using your product, how many developers are using your product. What you can determine, because you have a broken tracking mechanism, you can determine if action causes result. You don't know if the same developers adopting your product are the same developers that have, seen your marketing activities and consumed the content. That is usually due to, again, non-complete marketing tracking mechanism and business intelligence. That is fairly common also when it comes to a lot of the activities that most developer relations deploy. If you're thinking about, for example, publishing YouTube videos or attending third-party developer events, most of the time you don't know who is consuming the content. You don't really have a way to capture who these folks are. And so you don't really know if those people that have seen your content as consumer content are the same developers taking action and adopting your product. And if you go back to your leadership team with just like a broken process where you have, something on the marketing side, you said we did X amount of activities, and also separately, here's how many developers have adopted the product. You cannot really demonstrate that the developers adopting your product are the same developers that are going through your marketing activities. So what you need to demonstrate, what you need to build, is a body of evidence that allows you to demonstrate that there is, if not causation between your activities and the final result, at least there is correlation between the two. You need to be able to build out, to demonstrate a journey between action and result. If you're able to do that, then you will start fixing this broken funnel where you don't have entire end-to-end attribution. So now you'll say, okay, Mario, that all sounds great, but how do I build correlation? How do you determine correlation? There are a few mechanisms that you can put in place to determine correlation, and everything really starts with defining meaningful goals for your team, to define what the North Star is, but also what are the type of activities and type of goals and KPIs that you put down to your team. So how do you define meaningful, measurable goals for your team that contribute into demonstrating adoption? So the first step here in demonstrating correlation is making sure that you fully understand what are your team's levers. And when I say levers, I mean what are all those activities, let's say those buttons that your team can push to determine a change in behavior by the developer. And this is very different from the top level goal that you should set for your team. Your top level goal should always be related to adoption. Like the North Star that you need to give your team is we want to drive adoption of a certain product or of a new feature. That should be the end game. That should be where you want developers to get to. However, the mechanism to get there, to get to adoption, should be what are the levers that your team can control to get there. And when it comes to levers or activities, they need to be very specific and about the different functions that you have, and they need to be about what they can actually control, what is in their control. So let's think about developer advocates or developer evangelists. They are usually tech experts that create content and distribute content with the developer community. So you could assign set levers like produce X amount of pieces of content on this specific product, or reach a certain amount of developers speaking about this product, or about quality, maintain a speaker quality on talks about product X. And there are a few ways to measure that. Or if it is your marketing team, marketing is usually about distributing content with the biggest number of developers. So you can think about things like levers like deliver X amount of campaigns on product X, drive X impressions to the technical content about product X, or for example, reduce bounce rate on content about a certain product. At the end, it boils down to what are the things that are in your team controls, and they can feel empowered when they reach those goals. And the interesting thing is that when you look at them, these are measurable team functional KPIs. These can literally be the goals, the meaningful goals that you assign to your team. Because if you go to your entire team, to let's say to your developer advocates, and you assign individually to that team or to that person to drive adoption of a product, it's not really in their control. What they can do is control their inputs, their levers into the business. So it's good to assign measurable KPIs related to these levers. And this applies to advocacy, marketing. You can do the same with documentation and all the different aspects of developer relations. And the great thing is that this allows you to have a framework of reference when you are debating performance with your team, when you're debating if they're reaching their goals, and even understanding if the things that you're doing are the right or wrong. So the next question is, how do these levers actually relate to the broader business and delivering correlation and driving correlation between activities and adoption? So what you need to do is to measure how levers correlate to adoption. And the only way that you can do this is through data. You need to build dashboard and reporting where you are tracking all the activities that your team is doing and tracking adoption. And you need to start cross-referencing this information. Literally, it can be a shared master table where you have adoption at the top, and then you have all the marketing activities declined as well. What you also have to do is to determine a sensible time frame for analyzing the behavior of developers, because what you will have is you will see peaks and down peaks in adoption of your product, and then you will see activities by your team which are displaced in time. And you want to start looking at trends. Let's say we added more activities on the marketing side, we added more paid marketing, we did more events, we did more content sharing about this product, and over time we see growth in adoption of the product, or maybe we don't. Hence, you start driving conclusions between the correlation between your input, your levers, and the output, which is adoption. What this sensible time frame looks like, it really depends. It depends on your business, on the rate of adoption. So I make an example. Let's say, for example, app developers, let's say they were doing a talk about a new feature that is very complicated. You cannot measure how many developers will adopt that feature the day after. because it might take 1 week, 2 weeks, depending on how the complex that feature is for apps developers to take it on, build it inside their app, and releasing that app on the store of reference. So think about what is a sensible time frame, and look at it in terms of something you can adjust over time. Maybe 1 month is enough. Maybe it needs to be 1.5 months. Work with your team to understand what is the knock-on effect when it comes to input versus output, and iterate. Like, this is not a precise science. It has a lot of different variables, again, depending on your team, depending on the inputs that you're putting in, depending if the content that you're creating is resonating or not with developers. But what you have to do is to constantly iterate and change things. That's why you want to define master goals for your team, for the individual functions that are flexible as well. Like, you might want to say, build a certain amount of pieces of content for your evangelists, without necessarily defining if those should be videos or blog posts or Twitch live streams or events, because you don't really know what is going to work, and you want to get to a point where you learn what are the most effective channels for you. Ultimately, after you do this over time, and again, I want to be very specific here that it's a long game. You want to be in for the long game. You will get a picture of what levers control adoption and how. At that point, we will be in a much better position, because you will know with a better degree of precision that by doing a certain input, by controlling certain levers, you drive a certain amount of output in terms of developer adoption. So in a sense, once we have defined all these tracking capabilities, and we start attribute between levers and output, we have technically fixed our funnel in a way. We know that by doing certain action, we will drive adoption, which is what we need to go back to our leaders with and demonstrate in order to demonstrate value, to say we have strong evidence, if not direct causation, we have strong correlation between the activities that we're putting and the result that is coming out at the end, the adoption of the product. So some quick tips on how to get there in a better way, and how to improve your tracking and funnel overall. First of all, brush up on business intelligence, or if you can, build a business intelligence team. Like, your team needs to be able to manipulate data. Like, get to the point, if there is a BI team somewhere else, I don't know, you bribe the BI team to work with you. You need to be able to get your hands on data and build correlation of data. So in that sense, brush up on UI, on BI yourself. I know that's something that I had to do all the time to get better at collapsing, merging, and interpreting data. That is absolutely crucial. You cannot run a successful developer relations organization if you don't manage and manipulate data. Have your functions collaborate and share data. That is super important. Your marketing team and your evangelist team and your documentation team, your localization team, they should all talk to each other and share their data. You should even have a moment in which all this data comes together and you share with the broader team. The reason for that is, let's make an example, marketing and evangelism. Evangelists need to know what content is resonating more with developers. And marketing, they have usually all the visibility on what content resonates more, what type of, what are the videos and emails with the better click-through. And that data needs to be shared between the two, because one informs the other. And also always have clear measurable call to action for your activities. An activity that you can't measure in any way is an activity that it doesn't demonstrate value to the business, because you cannot associate and you cannot to the final result, and you cannot build patterns on it. So, and last but not least, most importantly, if it is possible, focus on building end-to-end tracking and attribution capabilities to determine causation. So the correlation imperfect funnel is okay. As I said, as you saw today, there are ways to fix it. But if you can build your systems to get to the ideal scenario where you have end-to-end tracking capability, that's where you want to be. So work with your team, with your BI team, with your engineering team to make sure that you can get there at a certain point in time. So in conclusion, if we want to try to answer that question again, how do you measure success? You want to define meaningful goals. Meaningful goals means goals that are really related to what your team can control and what they can do to drive adoption. So your top level goals for your team should be about adoption, should be driving product X with developers. And your team functional goals should be about their levers and their action. By correlating those two, by analyzing the journey of the developer, and by measuring success this way, you will be making sure that you're contributing into not only your team success, but your top level company success. So I'm done for today. Before I leave you, I just want to say that I'm hiring. So if you like what you saw today in terms of our approach to developer relations, I'm hiring a developer evangelist in my team based in the UK. So please, here's a short link. Please reach out to me if you have any question, if you want to learn more about our team. It's a very fun team to work with, very dynamic, and we'll do a lot of cool stuff. So please, if you're interested or if you know anyone interested, get back. And last but not least, thank you very much. Here's all my contact details. You can reach me via email, on social media, mostly on Twitter or on LinkedIn. And it was a pleasure being here today. If you have any question, reach out to me, and have a great rest of the Developer Marketing Summit. Thank you.